Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, completing our look at what we might call the Nazis' first phase of consolidating its power. It will continue throughout the year ahead. We have looked at the March election of 1933, the Reichstag Fire and the Decree for the Protection of People and State, and we have looked at the propaganda exercise that was the Day of Potsdam. Now we will complete our look at this first phase of consolidation with the Enabling Act. The day after the election, March the 6th, the Communist Party was banned, and its 81 delegates could be discounted from the number Hitler needed for a two-thirds majority in the Reichstag, the majority he needed to change the constitution. Meanwhile, the violence on the streets not only continued but intensified, and social democrats and trade unionists were now targeted. As with the communists, party officers were attacked, local officials were arrested, so that local party organisations, in desperate acts of self-protection, closed themselves down. A number of national leaders fled the country, and nothing of this was reported, as Social Democrat newspapers continued to be banned. The ban had started just days before the election, and was renewed every 14 days until it became permanent. And so, two parties representing a third of German voters throughout the Weimar period were crushed. Such was the scale of the Nazis' move against the two parties that the most conservative estimate put those detained for political reasons in 1933 at over 100,000. Starting with Dachau, just outside Munich, the Nazis opened concentration camps to house their victims. This wasn't a knee-jerk reaction either. It had long been planned by the Nazis. The camps were put under the control of the SS and quickly became what the historian Richard Evans describes as a world without regulations or rules. The violence was brutal. Violence of the fist, the boot, the truncheon and the gun. And what's more, the condition in the camps was widely publicised. The Nazis wanted their enemies to know what awaited them if they dared oppose the national revolution. That said, the vast majority of those taken to the camps did not stay that long. 35% were detained for no more than a month, though we can be sure it would be a month they would never forget. And very, very few were detained for more than a year. And the German people accepted it. They had been conditioned to violence throughout the Weimar years. It had been an almost ever-present part of political life in Germany since the German Revolution. The Reichstag fire and the Nazis' claim that it was intended to herald the start of a communist revolution was enough to convince most people that such extreme measures were necessary. After all, hadn't Hindenburg signed the Reichstag Fire Emergency Decree? And if social democrats were now included in the roundup of victims, well, weren't they Marxists too? But Hitler wanted nothing less than control of the state. In his negotiations after the July election in 1932, he had demanded an Enabling Act as part of any deal. He wanted the same now. He wanted to be able to bypass both the Reichstag and the President and promulgate laws directly, and he needed that two-thirds majority, though this was made easier by discounting the Communist Party deputies, even though they had been legally elected. When the Reichstag met to decide the matter, Out of the 120 Social Democrats elected, 94 were present. Some had been arrested. Some were intimidated into staying away. Some were described as ill. That left the votes of the Centre Party delegates as crucial for the bill to be passed. Fear of a Bolshevik-like revolution had led the Centre Party, previously supporters of Weimar, to see the benefit of a more authoritarian government. Mussolini's fascist government in Italy had reached a concordat with the Pope, which protected the Catholic Church's key interests. And in 2 days of talks, Hitler had promised a similar deal for Germany. The Vatican made it clear that they wanted the Centre Party to reach an accommodation with the Nazis. Still, the atmosphere in the Kroll Opera House was unbelievably intimidating. Deputies had to run a gauntlet of chanting Nazis as they arrived. Inside the building, including the debating chamber, the SA and SS, armed and menacing, made their presence felt. The debating chamber was decorated with swastikas. The Nazi Party delegates and Hitler were dressed in the paramilitary brown shirt uniforms of the party. Standing under a huge swastika banner, Hitler introduced the bill. His proposal seemed a moderate one. He introduced it by saying, "The government will make use of these powers only insofar as they are essential for carrying out vitally necessary measures. Neither the existence of the Reichstag nor that of the Reichsrat is menaced. The position and rights of the President remain unaltered. The separate existence of the federal states will not be done away with. The rights of the churches will not be diminished, and their relationship to the state will not be modified. The number of cases in which an internal necessity exists for having recourse to such a law is in itself a limited one." Nothing to worry about then. But his speech ended with a clear threat. The government of the nationalist uprising is determined and ready to deal with the announcement that the act has been rejected. And with it, that resistance had been declared. May you, gentlemen, now take the decision yourselves as to whether it is to be peace or war. The reply from Otto Wels for the Social Democrats was nothing other than heroic. He pointed out the achievements of the Weimar Republic, the equality of opportunity, the extension of social welfare provision, and the return of Germany to the international community. And then he said, "In this historic hour, we German Social Democrats solemnly profess our allegiance to the basic principles of humanity and justice, freedom and socialism. No enabling law gives you the right to annihilate ideas that are eternal and indestructible." The bill passed by 444 votes to 94. Only the Social Democrat deputies voted against it. The SA, surrounding the chamber, burst into the Horst Wessel song. The Reichstag Fire Decree, the Decree for the Protection of People and State, and the Enabling Act, the law for removing the distress of people and Reich, gave Hitler the legal constitutional platform to do as he will. How can you argue against a decree that protects people and a law that removes distress? But let's be clear about what the act enabled Hitler to do. He could now make laws, including further changes to the constitution, without recourse to either the Reichstag or the president. The checks and balances between executive and legislature would be no more. The Reichstag would continue to exist, as would the upper chamber, the Reichsrat, and the office of the president, but they would hardly matter. The separate existence of the federal states would continue to exist too, but they would be bypassed, just like the Reichstag and the president would be. All independence, all authority would be lost. The Act would have to be renewed after 4 years, but this was never going to be anything but permanent, so long as the Nazis were in power. And the language used by the Nazis is interesting to note. The historian Richard Evans draws attention to it. What, on January the 30th, had been called a government of nationalist concentration, soon became the government of the nationalist uprising, and by early March had become a nationalist revolution, before quickly becoming the National Socialist Revolution. What began with a nod to the collective, a government of, ended with a clear identity with just one party, the National Socialists. Also, uprising very quickly appears, followed by revolution. Things were going to radically change, and it was implied that violence would be necessary. The one constant is the use of nationalist. This was always about Germany and Germans. The Nazis now moved at full speed to bring about Gleichschaltung, or the coordination of the state. But it should really be regarded as the Nazification of the German state. And that's what I'll move on to in my next presentation. Meanwhile, don't forget there's my website, History Made Easier, that's there to help you too. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. It should prove useful for you. But for now, let me thank you, as I hope I always do, for listening, and wish you the very best of luck with your studies. Cheers.